Bet and breakfast on a Thursday. What is good, everybody? Welcome in. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Over the next 15 minutes or thereabouts, we will go through our favorite plays and best bets of the night for Thursday. We'll also go over our plays and fades in the NFL for Week 15. Only just 4 more weeks to go in the NFL regular season. It has gone by awfully fast. Ben Heisler with my guys, Donovan Smoot and Ian MacMillan. The gang is here for Thursday. Gentlemen, good to see you. We woke up this morning to what shouldn't have been surprising news, but then again, with the Jacksonville Jaguars, it always tends to be a little bit surprising based on how they tend to typically do business. Urban Meyer took 13 games for them to realize probably not a good fit, and here we are. Donovan, we were talking about this before the show. Like, how did it take them this long to actually go ahead and make this decision, and where do they go from here?
I mean, I guess the only way to go is up, like yeah. If we're trying to put a positive spin on it. But I'm still shocked. Not that they made this decision, but that they decided to just, show who they really are and show that they're a dumpster fire of organization and try to get, and trying to get this news off at 12:30 at night, and act like nobody saw this. Like, you made the mistake of hiring Urban. That's cool. We understand that people make mistakes. Just go ahead and own it. So there's that. I don't know how it took this long though, because they've looked bad this year.
Yeah,
awful.
The funniest part of it is that out of everything that's happened, the losses, the scandals, the final straw was the story that came out that he kicked his kicker during training camp, and then that was it. It was like the scandals weren't enough, the losses weren't enough, the bad locker room wasn't enough, but he kind of kicked his kicker during training camp. All right, you're gone.
Yeah,
you can't be kicking people. You can't basically assault people. Like, that's a crime. That's a crime, and you have to go.
That's the perfect example of the kind of thing that a college coach can kind of get away with.
Yeah.
But in the NFL, that's just not going to fly.
Not anymore. I think you're starting to see college athletes, especially college football and basketball players, start really standing up for themselves. And I think that's a really good sign that you're starting to see that more in college sports. That there's think about the Dabo Swinney comments from yesterday about the NIL rules and how it's like it's not something that it's a world where the inmates are running the asylum. Like, you can't go with that perspective anymore, because now that you don't have the same power that you once had, everything changes, and now the players are back in control. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago when the MLB lockout first happened, that we're in a time now in sports where player empowerment is more important and more substantial than ever before. Like, the days of sort of being the hard ass coach where you can get away with whatever you want just because you're winning isn't going to happen anymore. And I think that's progress.
I think so as well. That's definitely good. Again, but think about where the bar is. We're just saying, yo, don't put your hands on people. Just be an adult and use your words, right? And if you're because most of these coaches are, upper 50s, 60s. If you don't know how to talk to a 22-year-old, and that's just in college, right? Excuse me. If you don't know how to talk to an 18 to 22-year-old, that's on you. If you're Urban Meyer and you're dealing with other grown men, and you literally resort to kicking and screaming, shout out Will Ferrell, and you are kicking and screaming these players, that's a you problem, and that's actually unacceptable.
Shout out Will Ferrell.
Yeah, shout out to Will Ferrell. A couple of comments coming in over on the live stream. Just LOL Urban from Young Acorn. I think that's a good way to go ahead and just describe everything going on. Also, our guy Peter checking in. Big fan of Donovan's attire today, rocking the sweater. Elite, according to our guy Peter. So shout out to you, Donovan, for bringing both myself and Ian up on these Thursday pods. I was thinking, though, like, is this one of those situations, because the Jags are terrible, right? They had 8 rushing yards, period, last week in week 14, 8. And now they get the Texans at home. We've seen this line move from 3 to 3.5. Some other books have it at 4. So if you're looking to jump on Jacksonville over at WinBet, now might be an ideal time to jump on it if you're watching this live before the number maybe eventually moves to 4. But like, Ian, are you looking at any possible props or plays on this? Maybe there's like a nice bounce back effect for Jacksonville now that Urban is no longer in the building.
I unfortunately already have my bet locked in for the game, so I'm on the Texans. I didn't know they were going to fire Urban this week. But prop bet, I mean, I'm probably going to take the over on all of James Robinson's prop bets because he seemed like one of the main guys that was kind of getting the short end of the stick when it came to Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer just wanted to feed the ball to Carlos Hyde, his former player at Ohio State for some reason. So hopefully James Robinson's going to finally get his fair share of carries and receptions. So if I was looking at player props, I'd look James Robinson.
I like that play. I like the over on Trevor Lawrence yards as well whenever that number comes out because the Texans were just atrocious at stopping Seattle downfield last week. Have to think that they're actually going to be taking some chances this week with Lawrence trying to open up the playbook. Is there anything, whether it be a prop, Donovan, or maybe a play for that game? I mean, the nice part is that with Urban gone, there's actually something to talk about between two of the worst teams in the NFL playing against each other. Is there anything that you like there?
Yeah, it's actually funny, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but that's actually the game that I'm staying away from. I don't want to really touch this game. I think there's just too much outside going on because even outside of the Jaguars, Davis Mills is coming in back for the Texans, right? And so now you have this whole other dynamic of, okay, can Houston try to revive anything out of Davis Mills? Can they get anything? He had that one good game against New England, but the rest has been really, really shaky. So I'll talk about it a little bit later, but I'm kind of staying away from that.
It's crazy to think that like Davis Mills' best game of the season was against the hottest team in the NFL, the team that everybody is all of a sudden announced that they're back in New England. And it was almost a couple of months ago, but the Texans were at one point stopping on the Patriots' door at home, ready to pull off an upset. And I think a lot of people took New England in Survivor that week and got very, very nervous up until the very end.
One final note before we move on, though, really quick. Props to Urban Meyer. They beat the Bills. Remember that? People are just going to forget about that game, but that Jaguars team somehow beat the Bills one week. That's crazy.
That's true. And by the way, we're on different sides here. According to the odds makers, they think that the Bills right now over at WinBet might be the best value. We wrote about that over at BetSided. Donovan, I know you disagree. I know that's something that you wrote about. So really quickly, you have any faith that the Bills can turn it around despite losing? Was the loss to Jacksonville maybe the final straw for you?
No, it wasn't even the final straw. It was more of the beginning of the end. I think that the Chiefs win seems so far ago. It seems so long ago that this team put up 38 on the Chiefs.
Yeah.
And you look at the Chiefs now, you look at how the defense is playing, you're like, well, it's a completely different team. So I think if the Bills and the Chiefs met today, I'm taking Kansas City. And I wouldn't be hesitant about it at all. I think the Bills, the last 2 weeks, you have two opportunities, and next week really will prove who's right or who's wrong, because you have 3 games against playoff contenders in 4 weeks. Can you get through this gauntlet, and can you turn your season around? And if you can't get one win out of these 3 games, you have a problem.
No doubt. Yeah, it'll be a fascinating development. The Chiefs, by the way, their defense has been elite over these last several games. The only team to give up single-digit points in 4 of their last 5 games, you have to go all the way back to 2014, the Legion of Boom Seattle Seahawks. The last team to do that. Kansas City's defense has been awesome. Before we dive into NFL plays and fades for this week, we were having a fun conversation off air that I just wanted to get a couple minutes on because I know a lot of people have opinions on this, but Cooper Kupp right now, the odds on top number 1 wide receiver in fantasy this year. He has 113 catches. He has 12 touchdowns. If you're looking at points per reception leagues, he's got 335 points. Justin Jefferson of the Vikings is about 70 points behind him. So here's my question for you guys, because everyone's got a take on this. If you have the first wide receiver, if you can take any wide receiver on the board in fantasy next year, because we're all starting up the playoffs, who you're taking? Is it Cooper Kupp? Is it Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson? Ian, let me start with you on this. If you have a guy for the top wide receiver that you would project for next year, who would it be?
I think it comes down to if Aaron Rodgers stays in Green Bay. I think if he stays in Green Bay, even with the season Cooper Kupp has had, I think you have to kind of go Davante Adams. But if Aaron Rodgers isn't there, then you kind of have to go Cooper Kupp. How old is Cooper Kupp? Is he like close to Davante Adams' age? I was gonna say Cooper Kupp has some years left in him. I don't know if is he younger than Davante Adams?
No,
Cooper Kupp is 28, and I think Davante Adams is. They're both 28.
Interesting. So I was gonna say Cooper Kupp's a little bit younger. Apparently they're the same age. So I think if Aaron Rodgers isn't in Green Bay, I think I'd go Cooper Kupp. But I think it has to be one of those two. But if it's more of like a dynasty league or a keeper league, then I think Justin Jefferson's the play. I mean, no one's been better through his first 2 seasons in the NFL than Justin Jefferson. What
about you, Donovan? Who are you going with?
I'm on the same wave as Ian. I think if Rodgers is still there, you take Davante over Kupp. I'm not the biggest, and we were talking about this. I'm not the biggest Cooper Kupp guy. I would honestly take Justin Jefferson 2 and then take Kupp 3. I think Davante's floor is the highest, especially if Aaron is there. And what we've seen, especially early on, especially this season with a lot of the running backs getting hurt, is that if your first round pick, you need to nail that, and they need to be there for you in order to carry. Davante's going to do that, and his floor is there. Justin Jefferson is special. He's different, and so I think, especially like if Thielen starts to wane a little bit more and they start to lean more on Jefferson, I would take him second, and I would take Cooper third.
So here's my perspective on this. I think if you want somebody that's going to be the safest, the guy that's probably not going to get hurt, that's going to catch clearly over 100 balls, over 1,200, 1,300 yards, 8+ touchdowns, it's going to be Kupp. If you're going purely on upside, yes, it's Davante Adams if Aaron Rodgers is still there. Jefferson's interesting because he's put up really good numbers with Kirk Cousins, and Kirk Cousins may not be in Minnesota next year. Tyreek Hill is another guy who always is in the top, and yet he has games where he does nothing and other games where he has 200 yards in the first quarter. So I think I would go based on safety. You need to hit on your first round pick. And if that first round pick is a wide receiver, I think I want the guy that I know is going to give you something every time. There's 2 guys there. It's Cooper Kupp and Davante Adams. And I've seen it more consistently from Adams. So as long as Rodgers is there, he's my guy, followed by Cooper Kupp at number 2. So there you go. That's some interesting fodder heading into the fantasy football playoffs. We'll, of course, have some articles on some of the guys that we think could be playoff MVPs coming up over the next few weeks. But let's get into our Week 16 NFL plays and fades. A lot going on the slate this week. So, Donovan, let me kick things off with you. Who do you like this week? Who are you staying away from?
I love the under in the Raiders-Browns game. I think this game is going to be boring. I think this game is going to be slow, and I don't think that there's going to be a lot of points scored. The Browns are riddled with COVID protocol. They have nine total starters out on offense, defense, and special teams. The entire offensive line is either out or questionable. They're gonna have Case Keenum as the quarterback, and he was serviceable in the game against the Broncos on that Thursday night. But that game was carried by Dearness Johnson, and they still only put up 17 points. I think that the Raiders coming into Cleveland, it's going to be 34 degrees. They're going to be outside of their element. A little bit of cold weather can shock them a little bit. And also the Raiders, we've seen they're doing what the Raiders do, which is fall apart in the second half of the season. And in their last 5 losses, they haven't put up 17 points in each one of them. So I think that the Browns still have a chance to win this game. I think it's going to be tight, but I think under 39 is the way to go here.
Where you going, sloppy weather too. It's supposed to be rainy and snowy and cold, so that's probably why the total's below that mark of 40 as well.
I'm with you. Where are you going with your games, Ian?
I'm going to start Patriots money line. Saturday night. There's 2 Saturday games I didn't even know until I sat down to look at the schedule. I don't know why the Colts are favored in this game. I mean, you look at the 2 defenses in this game. They're night and day. The Patriots are 4th or something in opponent yards per play. The Colts are 21st. And do either of you guys trust Carson Wentz throwing the ball against Bill Belichick's defense, which is now one of the best secondaries in the NFL? No, I certainly don't. I'm not going to bet on Carson Wentz as a favorite against the Patriots and against Bill Belichick. And also Mac Jones, the Patriots passing offense, you don't really think about them throwing the ball all around the field, especially there in their last game. They literally threw the ball 3 times. But Mac Jones sneakily 6th in the NFL in yards per pass attempt. So they can throw the ball pretty effectively as well. So I think the wrong team's favoring that one. I'm just taking the money line on that one, Patriots plus 120. And the game that I'm fading and staying away is the Cardinals and Lions. It's 13.5 point spread. The Lions are at home as 13.5 point underdogs. You think the Cardinals are the obvious play, and they could be. I am on the Cardinals because I do have to bet the game. But the Lions do have a path to keeping it close, and that's if they run the ball, because the Cardinals' biggest weakness is I think they're like 30th or 29th in opponent yards per carry. You can run the ball against this Cardinals team. So if the Lions run the ball and they play like a little bit of defense, they could keep it close. And they've kept, a good handful of games close this season, ones that they haven't won. So 13.5 points seems like a lot. Despite how obvious the Cardinals play kind of seems, the Lions could be a little bit sneaky in that game. So that would be one that I wish I could stay away from.
Yeah, I mean, Cardinals are going to clearly get it done, especially coming off after a loss. But the Lions were so atrocious last week, and you almost kind of thought that would make sense too, even against the Broncos, who that had been struggling. But coming off of finally getting their first win, that was kind of their Super Bowl. So that's a fascinating game, and I'm with you. It just feels like it's too many points. Arizona could be one of those spots where they're trying to figure out what their wide receiver situation is going to be. I'm with you. I'm completely staying away from that game as well. For me, I'm looking at this under with the Jets and the Dolphins, and it's been creeping down slowly throughout the week. Although if you go to WinBet, most books right now have it at either 41.5 or 42. WinBet, as the time that we're started recording this podcast, still has it at 42.5. I think they're eventually going to move that number down. And so I look at this situation where you're, again, not great weather, probably a lot of rain in the forecast. Precipitation, I think, is at 50, 60%. Humid, kind of gross. The Jets are already struggling on offense. Miami, too, they've been better. They've been a little bit more efficient. But the Jets are 29th in scoring offense. Miami's 25th. They're 24th and 25th, respectively, in DVOA offense this year. And for anyone who's unfamiliar with DVOA, they take down and distance situations as well as both points and yards. Also, we have to talk about this, guys. Miami may not have any of their starting running backs. So they're all in the COVID protocol. And so that's helped set up Tua being a little bit more efficient downfield. Well, also one other game that I like this week, I mentioned it on our best bets video, Steelers +2 against the Titans. Mike Tomlin just absurd against the spread as both a home dog and just an underdog over the course of his career, hitting above 70%. And the Titans offense, by the way, still a mess, averaging less than 4 yards per play last week against Jacksonville. As for the game that I'm fading, it's the game tonight. I can't figure out, and I'm in Kansas City, so you would think that I'd have a better read on this Chiefs team, but I cannot figure out how to bet on. The last 3 weeks, I've gone on the opposing side because I thought the number is far too high, and they continue to cover both from an offensive side, and also the defense just shuts everybody down. And so the totals aren't hitting the way that I would expect them to as well. It just feels like with this matchup, missing guys, dealing with both sides of COVID, Sean Slater out for the Chargers. You have Chris Jones out on the defensive side for Kansas City. Just not a game that I want to be a part of. I have a prop bet for a little bit later on, but I do not have a good handle on this game. And I think that's helpful because, Ian, I know that you have a good handle for this game as we go through our best bets here on a Thursday. I'm going to start with you because you are looking at this game as your best bet of the night. So let's kick things off.
Before I get into that game really quick, Young Acorn in the chat want to know if anyone has an angle for the early college basketball game. Everyone's had this game circled on their calendar. Incarnate Word and Rice. Over 148.5. Both teams played a faster pace. Both offenses are way better than their defenses. Incarnate Ward, second last in the entire country in opponent effective field goal percentage. So I think it's going to be a high-scoring one. So there's my lean on that one, Young Acorn. Over 148.5 in that little...
I like that play a lot.
Start.
I like that play a lot. And I also have a theory that teams are likely to hit their over in early afternoon games because nobody wants to play defense at like 12 o'clock in the middle of the day. You just want to go run up and down the court, get a good sweat, and be able to go ahead and jack up some threes. So I like the over on that one.
I've seen some people say the opposite. They say that it's too early in the morning, guys are tired, and they won't be shooting well because their focus isn't there. But I don't know. Who knows? Maybe it is. Yeah, maybe I wouldn't want to play defense this early in the day. Best bet for tonight. Yeah, let's get into that. I'm going to take the Chargers getting the 3 points at home. It's certainly not one of my favorite bets of the week, but the Chargers kind of match up stylistically well with this Chiefs team. Also, they're sneakily like third in the NFL right now in yards per play, which I didn't know that they were going to be that high until I kind of looked into this game here. 9th in yards per pass attempt. Chiefs defense has gotten better, but as a season average, they're still 24th in opponent yards per pass attempt. So I think Justin Herbert's going to find some success tonight. And also the weakness on the Chargers defense is actually their run defense. If they play a team that can really run the ball, can really pound the rock, then they're going to run into issues. That's obviously not what the Chiefs are. The Chiefs are a pass-first offense, and the Chargers are 9th in opponent yards per pass attempt. So their secondary is kind of their strength there on defense. I think it's going to be a close game. I wouldn't take Chargers money line because this to me just seems like a game that's going to come down to a last-second score, a last-second field goal. And in those situations, you always obviously would rather have the 3 points than laying the 3 points. So going to take the Chargers at home tonight to cover that spread.
All right, like the play. I think, again, especially with the Chargers, Herbert and Mahomes, I think that's going to be a really fun rivalry. We wrote about it over at BetSided this week that we might see the beginnings of the next Brady versus Manning type of rivalry in the AFC, especially with both of them being in the same division. Could be really fun for the next 10 to possibly even 15 years. Donovan, I know you got a prop that you like for this game. Where are you going?
I'm going on the over for Tyreek Hill's receptions. He's only had 9 targets combined in the last 2 games. That's not what normally happens. He doesn't normally go on streaks of 2-3 games without double-digit targets. He's had 8 games this season with double-digit targets. The Chiefs, we've seen, what they've done over the last 2 weeks. They can be explosive without Tyreek, right? And they can go ahead and put points. That's not what they want to do. They want to get him involved. They want him to be a part of the offense. I think tonight, especially on a Thursday night, that Mahomes Hill connection is going to be really, really good. They keep him occupied, whether it's on, there's a little jet sweep passes or anything like that. Tyreek is going to have I see him having a really big game tonight.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think, too, especially if you're on the side where Tyreek has a big game, you might also want to side with the over in this matchup, too, just purely because they're going to need to go back and forth. Like, you can only contain both Mahomes and Herbert for so long. And I think the last game they played, they were going back and forth for a little bit as well. But expect a few more points tonight. For me, speaking of Herbert, not necessarily a bet that I would put a big part of your bankroll on. I think this is sort of a little shot in the dark. I just think the value is really, really good at WinBet at this number for Justin Herbert to get an anytime touchdown tonight. He's not afraid to run against Kansas City. He's not afraid to run in general, but especially against the Chiefs. In 3 games, he scored 2 rushing touchdowns. Chiefs are still a below average team against the run. You saw that over the last several weeks. They've gotten better, but now without Chris Jones, think about the type of rushing numbers they were giving up in the early portion of the season. That's because Chris Jones was not on the field. He takes off so much pressure from everybody else to be able to get pressure on the quarterback that without him tonight, I think you're going to have a lot more rushing lanes available for Austin Eckler. I think Herbert's going to take off as well. I mentioned this in the beginning portion of the podcast, but the Chiefs for the last 5 weeks, only them and the Legion of Boom over the last 7 years are teams that have held opponents' defenses to under 10 points in 4 of their last 5 games. And I also think, too, the Chargers without Rashawn Slater, they're all pro rookie left tackle, is out tonight as well. I think, if anything, that's going to force Herbert to run a little bit more tonight, knowing that they're not going to be able to have the same type of pressure to be able to hold off the guys from Kansas City on the front 7. So I think it's a long shot bet, but I think the value presents itself very well for Herbert to score and get himself an anytime touchdown. There you guys have it. Those are our best bets for Thursday night. Appreciate all of you guys hanging out with us on a Thursday for Bet and Breakfast. For my guys Donovan and Ian, I am Ben. Make sure you guys check us out over at BetSided. Head on over to fansided.com/BetSided. Make sure you guys follow us on Twitter and social media as well. We are on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at BetSided, and also available on YouTube as well. Until then, may all your bets hit. So long. We'll talk to you guys soon. Be good.